Hello, welcome to Universal Soul Love. This is Detective David Love.
This is Dr. Lana Love.
Welcome to our show. So today we're very pleased to have Mark Sargent on our show. Mark is well known for flat earth theories, and he has a website called enclosed.com and marksargent.com. And just very excited to have Mark on our show. We're very interested in the flat earth theory, and
Some people have actually called this the mother of all conspiracies, so I'm waiting with bated breath for the evidence that the Earth is flat.
I have my own ideas on this as well, but I know there's a lot of listeners who are interested in this as well, and I had no idea that there was a flat Earth society, and this was such a popular theory. Actually, someone made me the admin of a group on Facebook for this, so this is really interesting because way back I used to say. It was sort of a higher self transmission for me that in order for people to really open up their minds to unlimited possibilities and realize how limited our thinking is, we need to take the most fantastic sort of crazy theory that we could think of and accept it as a true reality and a belief. And flat Earth was, of course, once the scientists long ago decided that the Earth was round, flat Earth became an abandoned theory and an almost impossible theory. So I thought, well, if we can accept that, then we can actually go on to think about just opening our minds to what's truly possible. So this is really exciting. I had no idea, so I'm really excited to hear more about this. I have a kind of a holographic theory of the universe too, so we'll see how this all mixes in.
So, without further ado, Mark, maybe you could tell us how you got into this.
And welcome to the show.
Hey, and thank you very much for having me. And to kind of backtrack a little bit, what you were just saying there, it did actually. The flat Earth theory really doesn't conflict with many other theories, including the holographic electric universe. At all, but I got into this because I was a conspiracy guy. I had looked at just about every conspiracy there was over the last 20 years, ever since JFK came out in the theater, directed by Oliver Stone, back in the early 90s. And I was more or less bored. And to one of your points, when you said you were surprised to see this, look, this thing didn't even really exist 2 years ago, as far as having any major followings out there. And so I was looking for something interesting. And in YouTube, there's a lot of stuff. YouTube has changed their format over the last few years, and you get things recommended to you. And there's stuff, it's on the side, on the sidebar. And it's like, I look at every once in a while, and every conspiracy person knows. And I mean, I don't care what you're into. If you're into 9/11, Sandy Hook, Boston bombing, JFK, Pearl Harbor, take your pick. We just go on and on. But everyone knows about the flat Earth theory, but everyone just dismisses it because it's the runs of the litter. It's the book on the shelf that you know is there and you're never going to read it because it's stupid. You know that it's ridiculous, it's ludicrous, and it's been proven a long time ago, right? So I happened to catch this one little video by a German guy back at the summer of 2014. And he was talking about how the flights in the southern hemisphere didn't make any sense. Because they were taking these weird connections up all over the place, including up towards the north. I mean, going way out of their way, doubling their length. And he goes, the only way these routes even make sense remotely is if the Earth is flat. I go, okay, that's pretty good. I'll go along with that one. That's not bad. So there was another one related to it, and it was done by a Canadian out of Montreal. His name was Matt Boylan. And he was an artist that came out of college and was recruited, if you believe his story, and I do, where he sits down in front of the camera. It was one of the only sober interviews he did. And he talks about how that NASA had recruited him fresh out of college, I think, or 25, to do photorealistic painting for some of their simulation missions. Nothing sinister about it. And he was a very talented guy. He was an actor, he was a painter, he was a comedian, he was English and French, he was all sorts of fun stuff. And so he got invited to, NASA parties every once in a while, because most NASA, engineers and nerds, they're pretty stiff guys, they're pretty boring. He definitely was not. And he's at this party, and supposedly when the lights went out and it got down to candles and wine, some of the high-level guys were talking about how GPS doesn't work down in Antarctica. And one of the guys says, well, hey, Frank, you should send one of your teams down there to check that out. And another guy chimes in and goes, well, if you send your guys out that far, they're not coming back. And he goes, and Matt, bites on this, Matt Boyle, and he goes, well, why aren't they coming back? He goes, well, because GPS doesn't work down there. He goes, why not? He goes, well, because it's flat. And then the guy proceeds to draw in chalk on the tile floor on this big living room area, draw out what the world actually looks like. And when he did this, he goes, Matt was, at the end, he just still didn't get it. But at the end, he goes, wow, he just pretty much drew the UN flag. And so that's where I kind of started down this road, where it's like, okay, this is a good story. It's a good science fiction movie of the week story. But I should be able to punch through this thing in a weekend. It shouldn't be that hard to disprove. So that was, of course, the end for me, because I started down this, and I'm pretty stubborn. I don't like to let go of things if I can help it, and I tried to disprove it, like anybody else in the flat Earth movement, or what we call it the flat Earth awakening now. Everyone tries to disprove it. Nobody jumps on board right away. Everybody says the same thing, and that is, well, it's ridiculous. I can prove it's a globe, and then you fail. And then you have to come to this realization on your own. It's like, okay, I can't prove it's a globe. It took me 9 months before I could finally say, and granted, there wasn't nearly as much material as there is now.
Mm.
And that's where I was. So 9 months later, I created, in the February of last year, I created something called Flat Earth Clues, which is a preposition I put to the internet. I said, look, I don't think, and I was really putting myself out there, because I put up my phone number, my address, my email, my picture, the whole 9 yards, and I said, look, for whatever reason, I don't think it's a globe anymore. Prove me wrong. And that was February of last year. And not only has nobody come forward and shot this thing down, because I thought at least one scientist from even a small university would have called or written or something, but then I started doing testimony shows where people started coming forward from branches of the military, engineers, different people that were schooled in different disciplines, and they said, you know what? You might be onto something here, because there's all the instruments that we use say that it's not a globe. Now, they can't say if it's exactly flat, like dinner plate flat, Old Testament covered with a firmament flat, but they're definitely all saying the same thing, and that is that it's not a globe. And that's where that's where I'm kind of at now. So I made a series of clues, and then, waited, and since then I've been interviewed. I think tonight is my 82nd interview. Since then, a book came out. I've got apps, all sorts of fun stuff. So that's where we are now.
I think this is a really novel. This may be a first for us. We have a large following with conspiracy theorists, and I'm starting to not even like the term conspiracy theories, because there's a lot of conspiracies that are coming to light now more than ever, and we have activists on our show, and healers, and scientists, and investigators that listen in. So and guests from all walks of life and professions. So this is really amazing. And like you said, I think it took you 9 months to actually really get this down and nail it down. And so I know even for me or anyone, I think it would take a long time to conceptualize this and really understand it thoroughly. So I do recommend everyone go to your website.
Either enclosedworld.com or marksargent.com. But to be fair, it takes the average person at least a few days now. You've got more tools to work with. There's, like, for example, when I put out the clues last year, if you did a search on YouTube and just typed in Flat Earth, the number of relevant search hits was around, 50,000 maybe. If you do that same search today, it's over 6 million. It's pushing 6.5 million. That's a 10,000, 12,000% increase in 18 months. That's ridiculous. This topic shouldn't be a topic, but at the same time, it's caught a lot of people's attention because there's so many different facets that go down that even if you could try to shut it down, which is why the science community is just running for the hills with this thing, because they don't know what to do. There's too many unanswered questions which we'll get into, which come up, and that's, again, anyone that's listening to this now, look, I know it sounds ridiculous. I was where you are now. There's some people out there that are going to get angry. They're going to write in your chat thing. You're going to get hate mail. Absolutely, you're going to get hate mail about this because they're going to say, I can't believe you're even talking about this. But at the same time, they don't know why they're angry, because the conspiracy world. I mean, I've run into people that absolutely 100% believe that all the members of any royal parliament are made up of lizard people, right? Absolutely believe this. But when I say flat Earth, they will laugh and walk away. It's like, oh no, that's nuts. And it's like,
Sure.
what do you mean? You believe in the weirdest stuff ever. How could you not believe in this? And this is the most open-minded test you're ever going to face.
Sure.
Well, I guess it's a very much in your face sort
Really
of
is.
theory
Oh.
because we are on Earth, and I guess the thing that comes to mind with me is that in medieval times people did think that the Earth was flat.
Yeah, I mean, the scientists,
and
that's,
they said that ships would just sort of, I guess, drop down after they reach the horizon, but ships don't drop down. You can actually go from one side of the road to another, of the globe to another. So I don't understand how it can be flat.
Well, here's the thing. In fact, the technology, the detection technology, especially in photography, especially in camera work, has gotten a lot better recently. The ships over the horizon thing is very, very interesting because I didn't even touch on that in the clues. And something came out recently, a real cheap piece of equipment, very effective, called the Coolpix 900. And I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying it's got a really, its selling point is it's got a really, really fun, huge zoom on it. And so what'll happen is you'll see a ship, because the average human eye can only see about 3 miles. And the ship goes off in the distance, and you think it's dropping below the horizon. The problem is, you look about 10 minutes later, you zoom in with your Coolpix, and you can bring that ship back, and then the ship disappears again, and then you can crank up the zoom a little bit more, and you can bring it back to the point where you're thinking, well, what's the point? Well, my point is, mainstream science says the curvature of the Earth is 8 inches per mile squared, which is 8 inches times every mile times itself. So the first mile is 8 inches. The second is 2 times 2, which is 4 times 8 is 32. The third is 3 times 3, which is 9 times 8 is, it goes on and on and on. But the point is, after a certain point, that ship, regardless of how you think it disappeared over the horizon, you should not be able to bring that ship back because it's on the other side of a hill, technically. Of course, that hill's made out of water, but it is on the other side of a hill. Now, that hill may not be very, very deep, but it could be 400, 500, 1,000 feet deep. The ship should not be able to be, once it leaves over the side of that hill, I don't care what you've got, you should not be able to see that boat anymore. And and again, was not one of the clues that I talked about, but then I had a Navy guy, several Navy guys, one guy that was a missile instructor for the United States Navy, and he goes, look, we're painting targets at 60 miles, ship to ship, with a 2-inch beam radar. We're not bouncing off the ionosphere. We're going point to point with this thing. He goes, at 60 miles, that's 2,000 feet of curvature. He goes, that boat should not even be there technically, but we hit it every time. The missile system wouldn't work without it. And we see example after example after example of this. So for every person that comes back and says, I know, it's the oldest line in the book, which is, well, no, we see the ships go over the horizon. I go, no, you think the ship is disappearing over the horizon, but actually it's just disappearing to a vanishing point. No different than a little thing on your computer. Once it gets far enough away, it just shrinks down to 1 pixel, and then it becomes invisible. No different when the ship. The human eye can only see about 3 miles, but we're pulling stuff back now. And again, this was not even possible to detect 5, 10 years ago. It's only recently that we can now see things that shouldn't be there. And that's again, that's just one facet of.
Wow, that's amazing. What about falling off the edge of the Earth? How come that doesn't happen?
I mean, you might have to go a little bit more into that because this is really difficult to understand.
That's a good point because we haven't. No, because you got a good point. Because I was actually got into a debate at the end of last year with Stanton Friedman, the world's greatest UFO researcher, and I knew he wasn't going to brush up on this, and so we're like 10 minutes into the debate, and he goes, wait a minute. He goes, we're talking about this like it's a real thing, like it's actually it's not a metaphor for something. It's actually a real thing, flat Earth. He goes, well, how does that work? He wanted to know the definition. I'm going, okay, the flat Earth is, for all intents and purposes, well, I'll give a couple different versions here. One would just be a snow globe, where it is a flat surface, circular, with a dome over the top. No different than the Truman Show with Jim Carrey from 1998, I believe, where you have, if you take the globe, and you can look this up, you want the perfect version of it, you can look it up online. It's in Wiki. It's under a map projections. It's called the azimuthal equidistance, and that is AZIMUTHAL equidistance. And it's an interesting map because if you took a globe and you put your hand on top of it and squashed it to where the North Pole was in the center, then the continents are kind of splayed out evenly along the sides. It really becomes like a dinner plate. And then the only thing that's different, why you don't fall off the edge, is Antarctica, which is the only continent that's really affected by this map, is not a continent at all. It is the outer edge. So Antarctica, instead of being a continent sort of like Australia, only slightly bigger and icy, it just stretches around the entire edge. And Antarctica does fit the profile of a very, very unique continent that could keep in, everything that you needed. Most people don't know, for example, the shoreline of Antarctica is, it's basically a wall of ice, 150, 200 feet high, around the entire edge. And then once you get on top of that, it slopes up to about 2 miles, which is I can't remember what that is in kilometers, but in miles, it's 10,000 feet, 12,000 feet. And there's no indigenous plant life, no animal life, no relics of civilizations that we know of. It is unique in all the continents of the world. And what we're saying is that it's not a continent at all. It's just a giant circular landmass that surrounds this thing. And then above us, we are basically in a giant planetarium. If you want to tie it to the holographic universe at this point, you could. But if anyone's been in a planetarium, and I'll use this example other times, that's basically what it's shaped like. A circular, flat surface covered by a shallow dome. It doesn't have to be super high arcing like a snow globe. And everything you see on the inside of it, as far as when you look up at the sky, how is that different from a planetarium? You go inside a planetarium, you see the belt of Orion, Mars, Jupiter, all that fun stuff. What I'm throwing out there is, okay, when you walk out of that one and you go outside, how do you know you're not in a bigger one? And then eventually, we'll get to this, I'm sure, eventually someone will say, well, because NASA told us, we've got pictures from space. And I said, well, you're leaving that up to the Americans. But anyway, I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling. So go ahead.
Well, I guess what you're saying is that the Antarctic is like a round concentric rim of the plate. And because the rim goes up, ships don't sail off.
They go around it.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's basically it. The water, there's nowhere for the water to go because there is no technically the edge isn't at sea level. The edge is, it's kind of like a giant bathtub made out of ice. For lack of a better term. The water is held in perfectly.
So I guess the obvious question after that is, as the Antarctic and Arctic ice melts, we could go over the edge.
You mean, I'm sorry, say it one more time. So the Antarctic has an ice wall.
So when that melts because of global warming, then it really could go over the edge, or the sea could sort of basically drain out.
Unless there's some kind of film around it.
Because it keeps sloping up. It is so unique as far as continents go. Most of the entire continent, or most of the landmass that we've been at, is at over 12,000 feet. And there's mountains, huge mountain ranges and all this other fun stuff. So even if the coastline did melt, it's not going to affect anything. It'd probably add more water to the system, but I believe, that the entire system is artificial. Everything that you see here that we're in is part planetarium, part terrarium, part wildlife refuge.
Yeah, you're saying there's a film or a container holding everything in, which is interesting. I mean, I don't know. I call myself a mystic, and I've studied the nature of reality, physical and non-physical, for a long time, and I'm certainly not ruling out the flat Earth theory because I've gotten to the point where I just have no idea what the nature of reality really is, and I have my thoughts on the holographic matrix theory, just based on my experiences and my suspicions. But I'm also interested in Hollow Earth. So,
Sure.
uh,
I was a big Hollow Earth guy for years. I wanted to be on that ship back in the, what was it, early 2000s that was going to go to the North Pole and look for the entrance. And actually, the Hollow Earth theory doesn't conflict with this.
no, I don't think
Not
it
in the
does.
slightest. Because yeah, fine, it's not a giant spherical cavern, but most people forget that our civilization, 95% of our civilization, lives in a very, very narrow band of 0 to 5,000 feet. Everything else, that's a really narrow band of existence for us. So even if you had a cavern that was only a couple hundred miles thick, that's more than enough than you would need. I mean, you could put an entire new civilization down there and hide it from them as well.
That's
If
very
you're going to
possible
really
along
keep down.
the flat Earth theory, sure.
Wow. Okay, look, just being the devil's advocate here, just because I mean, it is quite incredulous, but I try to have an open mind. What about the varying star constellations in different parts of the world? I mean, if it was a flat Earth, then the
Oh no, I
constellation.
got you. It's not hard. No, I get that question all the time. And I know exactly what you're talking about, and that is the Coriolis effect, and that is where stars will spin in a clockwise direction in the northern hemisphere and a counterclockwise direction in the southern hemisphere,
And
or
also
whatever.
appear different depending on where you are.
Mm.
Yeah, when it comes to this, when it comes to anything in the sky, nothing really bothers me because what I'll throw another one, and I'll get back to yours in a second, which is because people say, "What about the star constellations?" I go, "Why the star constellations? Why not the blood moon?" A blood moon shouldn't even be possible if it's a flat Earth because there's no Earth between the sun and the moon. So how can there be a blood moon? In which I say, look, the entire sky is literally a giant display system, no different than it would be in a planetarium. When you go to a planetarium and they're showing you the different phases of the moon, you're not waiting in real time to see it. They're just displaying it. They're showing you, oh, yeah, here's a crescent, here's Jupiter, here's Mars. And you're thinking, well, yeah, but we know that's fake. I go, yeah, do you? Because you only knew because you walked in there. So I joke with people. I say, bring a pair of binoculars with you into a planetarium and take a look at Jupiter. Does Jupiter look like a sphere? Yeah, it might. But does it make any difference? No, it doesn't because you're in an artificial environment. And the difference there is you were told it was an artificial environment. You paid your ticket. You went in. When you walk outside of that, it's supposed to be the real world. According to who exactly? The Americans? And so when it comes to the star constellations, nothing in the sky is off limits. We can do this now to a limited degree. We've been doing it in simulations for the last 15, 16 years maybe, where you can change. In fact, you'd want to. If you were building this place and you had to buy some time and convince people that it was a globe, you'd want to create different things, and as far as simulating the globe, which would be the Coriolis effect reversing in different directions. Would not be tough to do at all. But think of it this way, because you can base stuff off on the displays off of regions. So you're standing at one end of the planetarium, your friend's standing at the other. You're both looking at the belt of Orion. You're talking on cell phone, and he says, "Oh yeah, the center star looks green," and you say, "Well, no, the center star looks blue." Well, who's right? Well, you both could be right because the display system could be showing you exactly what it wants to show you based on where you're standing. Again, we do this now. So when it comes to the sky, there is absolutely nothing off limits. Don't forget that some years ago, I don't know if they still do it, planetariums on the weekends were used for rock shows like Laser Pink Floyd and Laser Led Zeppelin and stuff like that, where you just took the stars out entirely and replaced it with all sorts of psychedelic images. What's the difference?
Well, it's interesting. I guess there's a lot of technology now, but when the flat Earth theory was abandoned in favor of round spherical planets, I mean, where would the technology have come from back then to sort of create these images? I guess we're getting into
Oh no,
alien
yeah,
technology, but
I gotcha. I'm not talking, and people do mistake this every once in a while, which is I'm not saying that mankind has done this, and I'm not saying that humanity has anything to do with the construction of
sure,
this
okay.
place. It is strictly you want to call it divine, depending on what religion you follow. You want to say
Right.
that God subcontracted out the work. whatever you want to say. No, the only thing that humanity, our civilization, has done is kept the lie going since the 1950s. I think that we were naturally supposed to figure this out no later than probably the 1970s. But since, of course, the first people that figured it out, and they probably knew in advance, they probably had some of the old maps. It was the United States and the Soviet Union. Men do not give up power easily, and that's when the world changed. Was in 1956.
Interesting.
Okay, so Mark, what you're saying is we are in a giant sort of dome, and we're being lied to, and this is sort of part of the matrix, and the real powers to be, whoever they are, gods or God, are somehow wanting us to believe it's a globe. Why would they do that?
Yeah, I mean, I believe this is a human experiment. You know, the I don't know,
there are
personal growth and development. You know, so
How does that?
There's all sorts of reasons you'd want to do it. Let's say you were an advanced civilization. I'm not going to try to pick the brain of God necessarily, but let's say you were advanced enough to build this place. And really, we're splitting hairs at that point, because if a giant golden spaceship shows up and says, "Oh yeah, we built it," some people are going to worship them as gods, and other people are going to say, "Oh, well, they've got technology, and hopefully we can have some of it." But why would they want to do that? Because let's face it, we only became interesting in the last 500 years. All the stuff that we've created, there's been some wonderful works of art, but we've created so much in the last 500 years that it's a great little distraction. And so, human beings were, of course, the ones that said, "Oh yeah, we think of the world, the world is a sphere, and everything's a sphere, and it's now going to be a heliocentric universe." But I think it was introduced artificially. Whether or not Copernicus was given some tips here and there. Again, remember, he didn't even publish it till after he died. He was that nervous about publishing it. That everything that we've done over the last 500 years has been really, really novel. And you could use this as part. I mean, is it part experiment, part amusement park ride, part school? You don't know, but all the stuff that we've done recently, it really warrants it, in my opinion. Because if you don't do it 500 years ago, what happens is people will start, the tools get more and better as far as exploration, to where once the internal combustion engine is invented 100 years ago, that's when, every effort would be focused on that, which it was to a limited degree. So I think it benefited everybody by letting it go as long as it has, although now we're holding on to it, I think, too tightly. I think we're holding on to it. Civilization is artificially extending this, and the powers that be, and by that I mean the creator of this place, is going to let this sucker finally come to light, whether they want to or not.
Okay, well, I mean, it sounds like God's really got a screw loose.
Whatever God is the creator. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I've found that beliefs are really not all that useful, and doctors and investigators are naturally open-minded and naturally skeptical. And of course, I worked in the court system where the standard is the reasonable man standard, or the reasonable person standard, based on preponderance of the evidence usually. And in criminal law, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. And I've come to the conclusion that if you use the measure of beyond a reasonable doubt in every belief and every fact that you think is true, you just can't do it, because there's always a reasonable doubt. And I was even told by I have my higher self connection, that everything we're told is basically a lie, in the sense that the universe is very different from how we understand it. So we need to actually just drop these beliefs and be much more open-minded than we are, and so that we can lose our limited beliefs to actually understand what reality, a more accurate picture of reality, because our perception is very skewed, and we don't have very good clarity because we're not using all of our senses. We're very limited that way.
To your point, by the way, that was the path that I went down, which was eventually, because I kept saying, okay, this is a dumb theory. It's a dumb theory. It can't be real. We all know it's a globe, right? But after I kept going down the avenues of, well, there ought to be just mountains of evidence, especially by the people with space programs, of showing us that it is a globe. And only after I started digging through these empty boxes, basically, did I come to the point where there was the reasonable doubt. I was going, wait a minute. How did I know? Where did I ever get the sense it was a globe? And then I was putting reasonable doubt. Again, because a lot of people that go against flat Earth, it's like, well, what's the absolute proof of a flat Earth? I go, proof? I go, all we have to do, the burden of proof isn't on the flat Earth side. It's on the globe side. And we put it out there, reasonable doubt in the globe. All we have to do is create that, and it shouldn't be there. Meaning, the globe side has had 500 years to build up its case. It should not be able to be shot down within, in less than 2 years just because people start, taking apart every piece of NASA footage and every piece of space footage and all the little weird things that's been happening since 1956, and all of a sudden saying, wait a minute, where are we? And that's where we are now. We've been taking apart NASA now for the last 18 months, and it's almost gotten entertaining.
It is. Everything's very entertaining right now. It's all happening right now. We're in the middle of a shift, and it's really crazy. But I think we're going to take a break right now for a couple of minutes, and we'll be right back with Mark Sargent. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Hello, welcome back to Universal Soul Love. This is Detective David Love.
And Dr. Lana Love. Welcome to our show. Today, we're dealing with, I guess, the father of all conspiracies, the idea that the Earth is in fact flat. And we have with us Mark Sargent, who has put a lot of research into this, and he has a wonderful website. What's your website again?
The free site is enclosedworld.com, and the subscription site is marksargent.com.
Mm-hmm. I like that you said father of all conspiracies rather than mother of all conspiracies. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
We also get into a little bit of post-feminism and some the masculine and feminine energies here occasionally. So,
all right. Look, I'm dying to ask you another question. How come there is day and night? How come when it's night in America, it's day in Australia? How do you explain that with a flat Earth theory?
Excellent. Yeah, it's an excellent question. I've gotten that one a long time ago, which is because again, we still haven't really broken down what this thing how this actually works and how everything functions. But the thought is, well, if it's flat, then the sun is shining on all things at the same time. And if the sun is an omnidirectional light source, then there is no day and night. It's always light. There's never going to be a night. And we go far as to say, look, unfortunately, you're going to have to forget everything that you know so far, because we're seeing not only are we in a dome-like structure, basically a Hollywood, planetarium, but that all the distances are screwed up too, and all the light sources. So the sun isn't 93 million miles away. It's very, very close. I mean, maybe even a few thousand miles away. And it is not very, very large. It's probably less than 40 miles across. The same thing with the moon. And if that's the case, the sun probably isn't omnidirectional as a light source. It's probably directional like a spotlight.
Oh my God, are you going to say that we might have several spotlights shining from different directions?
You mean as far as multiple suns?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
It's and I know it's really freaky when you start looking into it. But if the sun is a directional spotlight, and it looks sort of like the yin-yang symbol. If you took the yin-yang symbol, the black and white images, and you put them on top of the flat Earth map and spun it around, that's pretty much what we're talking about here. The moon is basically the same size as the sun, which is, not a big coincidence since it fits nicely in front of the sun. And it is not reflecting anything. It is its own light source. If you have any doubt about that, look up something that came up last year, which was the moon is actually generating a cold light. And I don't mean that it's colder at night. I mean that when you take a moonlight, for example, if and I'm going to use Fahrenheit because I'm up in the States, but let's say we all know that if it's 100 degrees in the we'll try Celsius. If it's 30 degrees in the sun, it's 20 degrees in the shade because the shade will block some of the sunlight. But when you're out in the moonlight, it's the exact opposite. And that is, especially during a full moon, you can get up to 13-degree, I'm using Fahrenheit again, 13-degree swings to where if it is, say, 20 degrees in the moonlight, it's actually 30 degrees in the moon shade. It's warmer in the shade of the moon. Shouldn't even be possible. And I was the first one to even suggest the alternative to that. I go, well, you really want to make a difference, go ahead and if you take a magnifying glass to sunlight, you can burn paper, right? If you take a magnifying glass to moonlight, what happens exactly? Does it get warmer or does it get colder? And it actually gets colder by several degrees. And yeah, it's the weirdest thing. We've had all sorts of people do fun tests. Now, does that prove a flat Earth? No, it does not. But it does absolutely put into question the relationship between the sun and the moon, because if the moon is generating its own light and it is colder, it is actually generating a refrigerant light, which we can do in universities now. It's called a cool laser. Then what exactly have scientists been telling us about it's reflecting the sun's rays? It doesn't make any sense unless, again, what we've been told. Here's what I'm trying to boil it down. I know we don't have a ton of time, but I'll throw this out there and you guys can give me some other questions.
Sure.
Which is what I'm saying is that how do you know you are where you think you are right now? Do you know because you saw a globe in your classroom since you were 6 years old? Or do you know because the Americans showed you a picture in a textbook in 1972? Because that's the only picture they ever released, all the way up until the middle of 2015. Literally, they took one picture, supposedly, from Apollo 17, the last mission, on the way back. Even though they were supposedly, Apollo 8, 9, 10, 11, all the way through 17, they could have taken all those pictures. Nobody took anything. They take one shot in 1972, and they milked it all the way up until the summer of last year. And that's where it's like 43 years. Only one picture of Earth was ever taken in full sunlight. 43 years. It wasn't taken a picture of the Americas, didn't take a picture of Europe. No, it was a picture of the southern part of Africa and all of Antarctica. Why would that picture ever be taken? And why weren't there any other pictures taken since then? And we know it's an absolute fact because the White House tweeted it last year. Neil deGrasse Tyson tweeted it. NASA tweeted it. Everyone's talking about, oh, yeah, this is the first picture we've taken in 43 years. Wow. Nobody. It was unbelievable that it was milked that long. Not only, here, I'll throw one more out at you. That's not only are there no pictures, full pictures of the Earth from space, there's still, to date, no video of the Earth rotating on its axis from space. There's no picture of any astronaut with a movie camera panning the camera 180 degrees or further, meaning no astronaut with a camera outside of the space capsule is even turned around, including on the moon. We don't even have pictures of an astronaut sitting in an airlock and the door opening and him leaving. There's such an absence of evidence on the globe's side. It's that line from Shakespeare, "He doth protest too much," as they're going way out of their way to not show us something. And the only reason you would do that is because the Earth does not look what you think it looks like. Plus, I'll throw, again, one more real quick, and that is, you're thinking, well, that's just space stuff. I'm going, fine. You want stuff on the ground? Tell me why Antarctica is owned by nobody. Tell me why the Antarctic Treaty was put in place in 1959, and no corporation, no matter how much money from any country in the world, has ever been down there to make money for anything. How is that even possible? You know full well that no treaty is bulletproof, but that one is. Not only are you not, let's say you're the president of ExxonMobil, you own a petroleum company, you have unlimited resources. Not only are you not allowed to go down there, you're not even allowed to talk about it. You're not even allowed to run newspaper stories saying, hey, how great it would be for Exxon to go to Antarctica. You're not even allowed that.
Well, I had heard that the reason for that is that they don't want us to discover that there's a hole there where you can go into hollow Earth.
Well, sure, that's not bad.
Theory.
That's not bad, but why would you seal off so much land, and why use a multinational navy to do it? I mean, you just treat it like Area 51. Put up some scary signs, say there was a meteorite, radioactivity. And Lana, to your question, because I know you asked this off break, which was why would the powers that be keep this a secret. And we're talking the powers that be, like, the governments of this world, not the actual creator, because it would change too many things. I actually did a clue on this, and that is the chaos that would ensue. Take your pick: educationally, economically, religiously. I mean, educationally, super simple. Every astrophysics department and every astronomy department in every university in the world are gone overnight. Any science that ends in an ology, they have to rewrite their textbooks to accommodate the new model.
That's
The
true, because
economics
it would
would
basically
be
be like you said, it would be the mother, not just the mother or father of all conspiracy theories, it would be the mother or father of all lies, the biggest lie ever.
Yes.
So that's
Oh
interesting.
yeah.
And I, there was a couple things
But
here. I wanted to say that in my book, The First Truth, a book of metaphysical theories, a lot of people realize that time is a human-made concept, a concept of the mind, and it's not that the universe doesn't really work on clocks and calendars. The creator doesn't work on clocks and calendars. It's a measurement that we created. And I noticed that way back, I noticed, I put this in my book, that when I'm driving and I'm looking down the nose of my car at the road going under, or I'm looking out the window at the trees going by, there's a sense that I'm not actually going anywhere. When I'm walking at night in a parking lot, a long one, and I close my eyes and I'm walking, there's a sense that I'm not moving and I'm not actually going anywhere. And I'm not sure why that is, and I don't have an answer for it. It's just
no,
something
no,
that
no.
I noticed.
You can no. There's an answer out there. In fact, I one of my later clues, I talked about this, which was there was a study that was done by a university some years ago, and it's inherent to all human beings. It's genetic. You want to call it a trait or a marker or a flaw, but we have an amazingly bad motion perception instinct, which is why simulators work so well on us. Whether it's a roller coaster, like when some people watch a roller coaster on television and get ill, or more often than not, everyone's run into this, where you're in traffic, you're in stop and go traffic, and then you zone out for a second, and then all of a sudden the car next to you is moving, either forwards or backwards, and you don't know if he's moving or you're moving. They did university tests where they put people in like a fake wooden car, and sometimes they would move the car, and sometimes they would move the wall in front of the car, and nobody could figure out with any certainty which was moving. And it's just one of our, I think we were also genetically designed to be fooled for this. It wasn't like we were just tricked. I think we were, we came into this that we were going to be fooled. But you're absolutely right. All simulators run along those same lines, especially
Well, we have
the
very
high
limited perception. Our senses are very limited. We don't see. We only see a narrow band
Oh yeah.
light spectrum, and our audio abilities are very limited. So certainly, we have limited perception. I don't know what you want to add to that, Lana, but
Yes, well,
it's,
I mean, it sounds like we do. I mean, it's still very hard for me to get my head around this. And look, I don't know, is it possible that the Earth could be a sphere and flat at the same time, just like light can be
It,
a particle and
it,
a wave at the same time?
mm,
It could be because some people suggested that that we're on a very flat place of a much bigger planet, which is very possible. And to your credit, Lana, believe me, I know it is not an easy topic to bring up, and I'm not trying to convince you during a 1 hour show or
Sure.
whatever we're going. Which is nobody gets this right away. Nobody does, because it's an affront to everything that we've learned. But that's where you got to stop for a second and say, wait a minute, why is this bothering me so much? I mean, when I first clicked on the original Flat Earth video that I was going to watch, I remember getting physically embarrassed, physically flushed, that I was even clicking on it. And I was going, wait a minute, I've clicked on every conspiracy known to man. Why is this one making me embarrassed? This is silly. And it's because we've been taught this. It's the only thing we debunk to children. We don't tell children about, Pearl Harbor or JFK or the 9/11 or all this other crap. But we do put a globe in their classroom. Mm-hmm. And in fact, there's a great quote, real quick, which was from 1946, I believe. George Orwell, the guy that wrote 1984. And he had said that he wrote an article in some English thing about how the Earth, what proof was there that the Earth was round or if it was flat. And he goes, most people, when you talk to them, and it's weird because I said the same thing. Most people, when you talk to them, their first knee-jerk reaction is, well, talking about? Of course it's a sphere. We all know it is. And then when you push them on it and you say, well, yeah, but how do you know? Then they get angry. And this was in 1946. This was full decade and change before NASA was even created. So how did people know for sure back then? And that was because, well, science told them. And so here's where it really boils down to it. That is, look, I use the Raiders of the Lost Ark scenario, which is, everyone remembers the whole Raiders of the Lost Ark movie in the 1980s, and that is looking for the Ark of the Covenant, and at the very end, the Americans get it. And what happens when the Americans get it? They put it in a crate, they put it in a warehouse, and no one ever gets to see it ever again. And that is, look, if something goes against science, something goes against scientific doctrine, they are going to bury it as quickly and as thoroughly as they can.
Because they have an interest in it.
If you've been
they have an
showing
interest
people
in doing that. This is all about self-interest and hidden agendas many times.
Absolutely.
Because that's how you stay in power.
Yeah, science will not go against itself. It's like shooting yourself in the foot. They won't do it. So what I'm saying is, look, if science figured out, if they were the ones that's like, well, yeah, we know it's a globe. Well, are you going to go up and take a picture of it? Yeah, sure, fine. They go up and they take a picture. And they go, oh, man, what do? Do you actually come back down and tell the population this? Do you tell them you were wrong for 500 years? Do you give religion that much clout overnight? Because religion, do you think they're going to, forgive that quickly, even though forgiveness is divine? Oh, no. No. Religion will come back against science with a vengeance. And they know
I think this is I think this is all about asking questions and questioning your own thoughts and ideas and beliefs is really important. And your YouTube videos were posted in a group where I was made an admin on Facebook. It's called Flat Earth Tactical Education Group. Tactical Education Group Raids, and I love that title for that group. It's fantastic, and of course I read people, and you come across as a really good public speaker, and you really offer some interesting information and ideas. So I do think that's.
Yeah, you've obviously spent a lot of time researching this, and we really respect that. It's just so. It's so crazy
out there.
to think about.
I know.
It is.
And I mean, I wonder, what I'd like to ask is, we're going to have to wrap up soon, but what are the possible sort of, I guess, repercussions of all this? If the Earth is a dome or flat, how is it going to change things? Because presumably also you're saying it's an enclosed planetarium, so we're actually trapped.
Well, that's just it, which is why you keep the edges hidden as far as possible. One of the clues I said that, imagine a giant wildlife preserve. Most animals live very, very well in a wildlife preserve. Human beings would not, though. All we would care about is the edge. That's all we would care about. We would focus on it. It's like, why is the edge there? Who built the edge? Why are we in here? And it would the questions would never, ever end. And there would be entire religions based off of the seeking of the meaning of the edge.
Like the Truman Show. Hey, can I ask you real quick before we end this? You have the number 23 in your email, which is really interesting because I wrote in my book, The First Truth, about the 23 effect, or enigma, which I found out about a long time ago when I started seeing 23 everywhere as a synchronicity. And you mentioned the Truman Show and Jim Carrey, who had a movie called The Number 23. I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm just really interested in getting your thought on that.
Oh, yeah, it's weird because, yeah, my email address is msargent23@comcast.net, and it's so strange because when I picked it, that email address has got to be 20-something years old. I literally picked it when I got to Colorado in 1995, and I didn't pick it. I mean, I was just looking for M. Sargent, because that's my first initial last name, and they randomly chose it for me, literally randomly. And back then it's like, all right, well, got me email, I'll just use that because lots of people you choose whatever the basic thing is as a number after it. And I didn't the number 23 movie with Jim Carrey, that didn't come out till years later, and I saw it and I had no idea. But yeah, every once in a while people ask me about the 23 part, and I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, that's sort of a universal, like a God wink sort of thing for me to let me know whether I'm on the right track with a particular thought. And Lana's seen this quite a bit, and it's kind of interesting. I think
we certainly do.
So go ahead, you can ask another question, Lana. I think we have a little time left here, it sounds like.
Okay, I think we've only got about a minute left.
Oh,
But look, thank you for telling us all about it. I'm just going to have to
yeah.
go and read up on it a bit more. Uh, don't
Yeah,
quite know
don't.
what to say.
I don't know. We've been
Uh,
talking about this for a while, though, you and I, kind
mm,
of tossing this one around because we do find it pretty intriguing, and so
yes, well, I mean, I think it's important to have an open mind,
for sure.
but you've blown our mind, so.
Well, again, don't take my word for it. Look, I'm just one guy. All I did was I just boiled it down to a series of questions that were easy for people to understand. Do your own research, ask questions. If you think you
Yeah,
heard
always.
me wrong, have whoever's listening out there shoot me an email and let me know what you think. But so
Sure.
far, all the testimonials have gone really well. No one has actually made it down the flat Earth trail where they've said I'm into it, and then they've turned around and said nope, I'm not buying it, and here's why. Nobody's done it yet. One guy tried from England, and he almost went crazy, as far as I know.
Okay,
Wow.
well, we're out of time, so
All
just want to
right, well,
thank you, Mark, for being on Universal Soul Love, and
that's all
Thank
from this planetarium here, and join us next week for more controversy.
okay, thank you, Mark. Take care. Bye for
thank
now.
you guys. Thank you.
Bye.